Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into Genesis chapters 29 through 31. And this section of the story, it's often called Jacob's exile cycle. And I think a lot of people read it as just this, complicated, messy family drama.
Yeah, kind of ancient soap opera.
Exactly. But the sources we've looked at show it's something so much more profound.
Right.
Our whole mission today is really focused on one central question. How does God actually fulfill his promises when Jacob, the guy who's supposed to inherit everything, is powerless, being exploited, and totally cut off from home?
And that framing is so important. Because if you miss that powerlessness, you miss everything. This isn't just a romance gone wrong.
Right.
It's a theological case study. You can see it in three movements. First, there's the delayed promise, then endurance under injustice, and finally this radical divine reversal.
Okay, a reversal.
A total reversal. I mean, think about it. Jacob shows up with nothing. He's deceived. He's trapped. But by the end, God has multiplied him. He escapes with his huge family and wealth, and his oppressor, Laban, is literally told by God to back off. It's a masterclass in how the covenant works under the worst possible conditions.
Okay, let's start right there with those hostile conditions. Jacob gets to Haran, and he walks straight into what our sources call the bride service economy. Can you unpack that for us?
Sure. So Jacob is what you'd call a poor suitor. He has no money, no land.
Nothing to offer.
Nothing. So to pay the mohar, the bride price, he has to use the only thing he has, his labor. And the price for Rachel is 7 years.
Wow, 7 years.
But the real danger here is the dependency it creates.
Because he's completely under Laban's thumb.
Completely. And here's the kicker. These deals were informal. There's no written contract, no impartial judge.
It's just kin power.
Exactly. Laban's the patriarch, he's the boss, he's the judge, he can change the terms anytime he wants, and Jacob has zero recourse. The whole system is just ripe for abuse.
And we see that abuse almost immediately in Genesis 29 with one of the greatest bits of irony in the whole Bible, the wedding switch.
Oh, it's so rich.
Jacob, the ultimate trickster, the guy named Heel Grabber, he gets completely played by his uncle.
The text just leans into the irony. There's this beautiful parallelism. Remember, Jacob deceived his own father, Isaac, in the darkness of a tent.
Right, to steal the blessing.
And now, Laban deceives Jacob at night in the darkness of the wedding tent, swapping Leah for Rachel. The deceiver gets grabbed by the heel himself.
I think that's so key because it shows Jacob isn't just a poor victim here. He's dealing with the consequences of his own history.
It's maturing him. He's being forced to learn what it feels like to be on the other side of deception, to be powerless.
And that injustice just flows right into the dynamic between Leah and Rachel.
He does.
So you have this structural unfairness. Rachel is loved, but she's barren. Leah is unloved, but she's fertile. It just flips everything on its head.
And this is where that theology of reversal gets really clear. The sources are pretty unified on this. It's not about who Jacob loves more. The story shows God explicitly siding with the vulnerable one.
With Leah.
With Leah. The text says God opened her womb because she was unloved.
What's so fascinating to me is how Leah processes this. She doesn't just have kids. She almost weaponizes their names. It's like a theological protest.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's an incredible window into her spiritual journey. Let's just walk through them. Her first son, Reuben, his name is all about her husband.
Right. Now my husband will love me.
Her focus is entirely on getting Jacob's affection. But then with the second son, Simeon, there's a small shift. She says, "The Lord heard that I was unloved."
So she's acknowledging God's role in it.
She's moving from demanding love from Jacob to recognizing that God sees her. Then there's Levi, still hoping for attachment. But by the fourth son, Judah, something radical happens.
It's the shift.
She just says, "This time I will praise the Lord." That's it. She's no longer naming her child based on what she hopes to get. It's just pure, unqualified praise to God.
That's a huge maturation from suffering to praise.
It is. And it sets the stage for what happens next in Genesis 30, which you could just call the chapter of raw domestic theology.
Yeah, the competition for Jacob's affection just explodes into this fight for survival. We have to remember, in that world, sons meant security.
They were social capital.
Yeah.
Without them, especially for a woman, you were incredibly vulnerable.
So that explains Rachel's cry, "Give me children or I die." She's not just being overly dramatic.
Not at all. It's an existential plea. Her entire standing, her future, her security, it's all collapsing.
And this kicks off the surrogate competition with Bilhah and Zilpah.
Right. And while it seems chaotic to us, our sources are clear this was a legally recognized form of surrogate motherhood.
So this was a way for women to have some agency within the system.
It was. They were using the resources they had to build their family line. But make no mistake, these children were born as claims in a high-stakes competition.
And that desperation hits a low point with the Mandrakes incident.
Ah, the mandrakes, yes.
Just feels like pure folk magic. Leah's son finds these plants, and suddenly the sisters are bartering for them.
It is folk belief mixed with sheer desperation. Mandrakes were tied to fertility rituals all over the ancient Near East. It's a very human moment, trying to control a divine blessing through, a plant.
So what's the theological point the text is making?
I think the text is being incredibly subtle, almost mocking the attempt. It lays out all this drama over the mandrakes, but then it notes that God opens Rachel's womb later.
So completely separate from the Mandrake.
Exactly. The narrative basically says, you can try all the superstitions you want, but blessing comes from God on his timeline. The mandrakes are shown to be totally irrelevant.
And that domestic conflict then spills over directly into the economic conflict. This is where Jacob finally starts fighting back.
Yes, starting in Genesis 30, verse 25. Jacob's had enough. Laban keeps changing his wages.
10 times, right. The text makes a point of saying that.
10 times. It establishes Laban as a chronic, bad faith employer. Jacob realizes he can't get ahead under these rigged rules, so he comes up with his own strategy.
The speckled and spotted sheep.
Right. And the sources are really clear. This wasn't magic with peeled branches.
No.
No, this was Jacob using his deep knowledge of animal husbandry. It's an early form of selective breeding. He's using his own skill, his survival intelligence, to retaliate against an exploitative system.
But here's the key theological point our sources emphasize. Jacob doesn't get rich just because he's clever.
No, absolutely not. That's crucial. He prospers because God is overriding the unjust system. Jacob's skill is part of it, but the blessing, the impossible success, is credited to God's intervention.
So it's almost like an early form of liberation theology.
That's a great way to put it. It's God siding with the oppressed laborer against the exploitative master.
Which all builds to the escape in Genesis 31. And the divine intervention becomes incredibly direct here.
It does. Laban is furious. He realizes he's been outmaneuvered, and he chases Jacob, ready for a confrontation.
And God just shuts him down.
Completely. God appears to Laban in a dream and gives him a direct warning. Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. It's basically a divine restraining order. God steps in to prevent violence.
But just before that, Rachel does something incredibly odd. She steals the teraphim, the household gods. This seems so random.
It's anything but random. The teraphim were way more than just idols.
So what did they represent?
Think of them as a claim to the inheritance. Possession of the teraphim often signified who was the rightful heir. So by stealing them, Rachel's making a threefold statement.
All right.
1, she's asserting her family's inheritance rights. 2, she's physically severing Laban's legal and economic authority over them. And 3, she's rejecting his ancestral spiritual control.
Wow, so it's a declaration of independence.
A total declaration of independence. It's her saying, we are cutting the cord. We're taking the future with us.
They finally have their confrontation, and it ends with the covenant at Mizpah. But it's important to know what this agreement was not.
It was definitely not a warm, fuzzy reconciliation.
No.
The sources call it a cold peace. They build a pile of rocks as a boundary, and the whole pact is based on mutual suspicion.
The famous line is basically, God needs to watch between us because we certainly can't trust each other.
Exactly. It's an agreement that institutionalizes their distrust. It's a pragmatic end to a cycle of exploitation, not a happy one.
So when we step back and look at the big picture, what are the core theological takeaways? The first one seems to be that God works in exile.
Without a doubt. Jacob is far from home. He has no altar, no temple, no ritual protection. He's at his most vulnerable.
And yet,
this is when God seems most active in his life. It tells you that God doesn't need a sanctuary or perfect conditions to fulfill his promises. He works in the mess.
And we also see that theme of cyclical deception. Jacob's past comes back to haunt him through Laban, but it's not just punishment.
No, it's a maturing process. He came to Haran as a self-reliant trickster. He leaves as someone who has learned to depend on God because his own cleverness wasn't enough. The delay and the injustice forged him.
And you can't miss that the women are driving this narrative.
Absolutely. Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, Zilpah. They name the future tribes of Israel. They secure the lineage. Their struggles carry so much of the theological weight.
So if you're an ancient Israelite reading this, maybe someone in exile in Babylon, what do you hear?
You hear a story of profound hope. You hear that God can prosper you even under a foreign master. You hear that God sees exploitation and sides with the vulnerable. It's a story that legitimizes survival under oppression.
And that's why it's so relevant today. It speaks to anyone in a workplace where the rules keep changing, to any family shaped by rivalry, to anyone whose faith is being lived out without an immediate reward.
The foundational message is just so powerful. Your circumstances don't have to be perfect. The system can be rigged against you. God does not require ideal conditions to keep his promises.
That's a really powerful synthesis. So, given that Rachel's theft of the teraphim was all about her severing the economic and spiritual authority of her past, I want to leave you with this to think about. What aspect of your own past authority, maybe an inherited claim or relationship, might you need to completely sever yourself from right now in order to forge a truly new and independent future?